everybody. It's Whiskey at Work.
That's why we keep you around. Jason.
It's Mark and Rob, and Dan Bruner's finally back with us.
You know, you're throwing out these insults. And how many of these bottles sitting on this thing right now did you bring in?
None of the bottles.
Okay,
I didn't bring in any of these.
That's probably his water bottle.
It is, yeah. He's got that's straight out of the tap.
That's an NPR one. I'm going to set that down over here. Nobody needs to look at that. No, I didn't bring any of these in, but I'm pretty sure
you should be nicer to the other people in the room.
What happens is we all know this. I find these, and I tell you about them, and then you order them. That's our connection here. That's our relationship.
I do all of the other stuff.
Right, yeah. They go on your credit card, so when the monthly statement comes in.
These both came out of my card.
No wonder they taste so good, huh, Dan?
Yeah, right.
They're delicious when you don't have to pay for them.
And Rob, to be fair, if he brought the bottle in, it'd be flavored, and then we'd have to drink it. Yeah. So this is probably for the best.
You know, Dan,
be glad you're in here this week and not next week.
It was funny a while back. Rob and I were talking about the text messages, how different they are from you specifically. Rob will get these text messages of, hey, I've got this Jack whatever. I've got this Jack whatever, right? If you want to come grab a bottle, grab a bottle. I get the ones of, Houston, here's candy corn whiskey. Houston, here's Eggo brunch in a jar. But the thing is, I love it.
And I can see
know your audience.
It's like,
yeah,
hey,
exactly.
Hey, Mark, want to piss Rob off? Here,
I half think, Dan, that's what's going through your head just a little bit, isn't it? Just a little when you said this to me. Okay. That's perfect. Well, we haven't had you on in a while, Dan. So, I mean, what's been new and exciting for you? Have you just been crazy busy with summertime, I suppose?
Yeah, summer just keeps me running between the two stores and chasing my kid playing baseball and all of that fun stuff.
Right. Of course, Dan is the owner-operator of Timmons Market, one in the Valley and one out in Box Elder. And
are they combined again now?
Getting there.
We can say it that it's legal.
Sure.
This way, no one's coming after us.
Let's hope not.
Another illegal injunction at the witching hour.
It's we're glad to have you back, Dan. And we a while ago, Rob, talking about bottles that Rob has tracked down. I don't remember how we came around to the Company Distilling and their new products that were coming out. Of course, Company Distilling is run by the former master distiller of Jack Daniels, who is Jeff Arnett, and he has a couple new expressions that he's come out with. Correct, 3 wood. How did we end up with this bottle? You had a friend that brought this, didn't you?
Was that the one where you said I was on vacation and you said you need to drive up to Tennessee and get this, and I just texted my buddy and he already had a case of it ordered. So
that's right. That's how this came about. And then Dan, how did you come across the rye version of this?
So the original company, I think, is the one you were talking about, the Blue Label company, right? His initial offering.
Yep.
So I was up here and you guys let me try that. And then I was listening to a podcast coming into town, and Jeff was being interviewed and talking about the Seismic Rye and the Tennessee 3 wood. And I remembered seeing Rob post something about having a bottle of that Tennessee 3 wood. And so kind of on a whim, I just checked online and was able to get that bottle of Seismic Rye, and figured it'd be fun to do a little side-by-side with those and some other ryes made by Mr. Arnett.
Well, I'm getting a little concerned here because Rob is becoming a rye fan all of a sudden. So I don't know. I don't know what has changed in you recently with this.
I don't think that's true, and I think I've been clear. I think
he's just a little rye curious.
I have liked all of the rye stuff that has come out from Jack, and I think a lot of that is based on the mellowing process that they go through. It takes to me, it takes that bite, that super spicy, peppery stuff out of it. I have dabbled, flirted, if you will, with other ryes, but I have not found a bunch of rye product that has been like, oh my God, if I see this, I have to buy it.
So you're not full-throated endorsing the ryes as of yet, correct?
Is that
no,
a radio term that you wanted me to step into? Or
well, Dan, what about you then when it comes to ryes? I think you're generally kind of a fan, aren't you?
Yeah, typically I like rye, I like bourbon, I like American whiskey. My name is Dan. I might call it. I don't know. Yeah, I've been a fan of rye for quite some time. Various brands. There's just the nuance of Some of them are kind of have a little bit of dill flavor. Some of them are grassy, earthy. Some of them are kind of more of a spearmint. And I like that diversity from that grain, how it can present different based on how it's produced by the different distilleries.
Okay. Well, we're going to compare both of these here just a little bit later on in the podcast. I got some questions I want to ask Dan about those since we got him in here. So what we are drinking is the Seismic Rye Single Barrel, which is straight rye whiskey finished with cherry wood. Do you specifically understand the cherry wood? Is that from the cherry tree? Is that what I'm guessing that's what that's from?
Yes.
Okay.
Where else would you get it?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know if because I don't know a lot about woods.
We should play that song at the rally for Clint.
No, we're not going to do that one anymore.
Can we have an outro from?
No, we're not.
Was it KT Tunstall?
KT Tunstall is his favorite
for
song.
Clint.
We'll cut all of that out of here and just send it to Clint. And then, of course, we're drinking the twice-barreled Special Reserve from Jack Daniels, which we did a couple podcasts ago.
I put a bigger hit on that last night than I thought.
Yeah, you did. That bottle's pretty gone there, Rob.
It's kind of depressing, actually.
We'll talk and compare that coming up. But I came across, there was a question, and Rob and you and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday, but I thought it'd be fun to ask Dan this too. When it comes to like values in bourbon, right? Rob and I I think got to talking semantically about the word value when it comes to what's out there. So you kind of explained it best when you were talking about like an Eagle Rare, right?
Yeah, I struggle with these questions that get posed on all these forums and on these articles about the best value bourbon. And the analogy I used with you was I like Eagle Rare, right? And at $40 to me that's a steal.
Yep.
And so it's a great to me personally, a $40 bottle of Eagle Rare is a great value. And in my head it's a great bourbon if I would be willing to pay more for it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
yes.
I might be willing to pay $50 or $60 for a bottle of Eagle Rare. Whereas Blanton's is, it's kind of that one's the one that gets made fun of in a lot of these places, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good bourbon. And if you can find Blanton's at its $60-ish price point, I think that's a decent value, but I'm not paying much more for it than that just because it's not personally one of the ones that I would gravitate towards. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yep.
Well, as somebody who sells this stuff, Dan, does that mean something different to you? For a valued bourbon. I mean, personally, what does it mean to you when you consider what a best value bourbon would be?
Yeah, I think I'd be along the same line as Rob as far as things like Eagle Rare. For me, things like Russell 10-year, great price point around that $30-$40 range. If you can find them at that, it's worth it all day. When you get into some of those, like the Blantons that are a little bit more heavily sought after, and to find them at MSRP outside of Timmons Market is sometimes
right.
a challenge.
Sure.
I was down in Texas a couple weeks ago, and I didn't see hardly anything down there from that perspective, as far as rare allocated even. And in talking to a few owners down there, it's kind of been dry since the distributor transition, even for them. But I think that finding a bottle that, again, you don't mind paying $30, $40 for, and you'll go back to that one constantly. That's what I kind of look for in value bourbons. Cooper's Craft's another one. And as far as like in the store, for me, we want to keep a blend of those value everyday drinkers, if you will, and not just have all high-end allocated $100 bottles. You just chase too many people away from that at that perspective.
Well, you got people that show up and clear off the top shelf, and then it's empty.
Right.
Shaniqua comes out and just brings up a shopping cart.
That's another good question, though. How do you know? How do you guess or pick what those higher end bottles are going to be that you think people will spend money on? I mean, how do you do that?
So for me, I spend a lot of time, I guess, learning about the industry. I have a 40-minute commute when I drive, and so I listen to a lot of different podcasts. I have a couple of different email lists that I'm part of that when there's a new product line launched or whatever, I'll get an email with the press release on it. I have a bourbon inspired Instagram page. It's my personal page aside from the store. And a lot of the pages that I follow on that are, breaking bourbon and different things like that, where you kind of get some of the advance notice from people that really have a lot of time on their hands to spend in even searching TTB label approval. And they'll launch, they'll send it out or post a picture of the approved label before the product's even in production.
Well, and you kind of have to know the area that you live too, right? I mean, you can see all this stuff on forums and social media and things that you follow that may be big in certain areas, but out here, is that kind of a gut instinct for you in some instances too, or do you think no, because this is nationally what people are talking about and getting, then there's a pretty good chance I'll be able to sell that here?
Yeah. See, at first it was a little bit of a trial and error, right? It was, we'll bring a few in and there were times where we'd make good choices in what we brought in. And there were times where stuff would sit on the shelf and it was just a little bit of a dog and we'd have to mark it down to get rid of it. And, I think if you're not willing to take a risk on some of those brands and even get out ahead of it in South Dakota, we're always behind the line on trends. Whether it's in distribution or just people picking up on it. And so over the last 5 years, that's been part of what we've done to try to move the bourbon culture forward in Western South Dakota, is to try to be ahead of some of those. And even if it means we sit on some inventory for a period of time, hopefully we can get it out in front of enough people to where they'll want to come in and purchase a bottle at some point.
Can you think of maybe kind of an infamous flop that you've brought out that you thought this might be the thing, but it just didn't work? Do you have anything like that on the top, or vice versa, one that maybe you didn't think was going to be such a big deal and kind of ended up out here being a bigger deal?
Geez, off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything that we brought in that, at some point in time didn't gain traction. Yeah. Short of, for me, unfortunately, the proof artists and distillers, I liked a lot of their product. Most of their product line I thought was really good. And maybe this is the downfall of it for where it came from. Like, you don't think of North Dakota as like the creme de la creme of spirits producing.
No, you just think of North Dakota as the creme de la creme of, radio announcers, really, I believe.
I don't think anybody thinks that.
Oh, they don't? Okay.
Mark does.
But he'd be wrong. He does that a lot. The proofs artisan stuff I fell in love with, and I never did think about it as, well, this is a pretty good bourbon for North Dakota. I just thought when we tried it and got on their radar and they got on ours, we both really enjoyed it, from the Crooked Furrow to
even their single malt,
the
Glen Fargo.
Glen Fargo. I mean, and then they started doing the different stuff with the Motorhead and the aging in the gin barrels and doing that. I really enjoyed it. Now, I was just thinking about that in your store. Does that have to be marketed just a little bit different and say, North Dakota bourbon, or it's bringing attention to the fact that it is, for lack of a better word, 600 miles away, but local? You know what I mean?
Yeah, we tried, because we had a fairly decent section of like the Colorado stuff with Tin Cup and Old Elk. And so we had some, like a section that was kind of dedicated to what I'd call regional whiskeys. Sure. And we had it right in there with it, probably in a spot that it hadn't necessarily earned a right to be in that spot of the set. It was probably a little more front and center than what I would normally put kind of an unknown brand. But I put it there because I was hoping that, knowing that Old Elk was doing well and knowing that some of these other, somewhat regional brands were doing well, I was hoping that it would gain more visibility and traction. And for whatever reason, it just never really took off for us.
That is really surprising. And it's too bad, because like Rob and I have said, it's, that 4-year Crooked Furrow was one of the biggest surprises when we kind of first started doing this and we came across that. It's like, wow, they really figured this out and knew how to make a good bourbon up there. Right?
And the Motorhead, I think, just took that up to another notch. I mean, it was a heavier, more flavorful mouthfeel and fuller. And I didn't mean this to turn into a proof artisan commercial here based
Well,
on
but
what
it makes sense with what he was saying.
Yeah, but that's the intriguing part of it is that, you know, you'd think that, I mean, they had great reception down here. I think most of the stores took some when they were down here. They were at Whiskey Fest and they interviewed here, and the guys are great.
Yep.
And the bourbon is great. I mean,
Yeah, I think so.
It's a little disheartening to me to hear that it's not performing as well as I think it would.
Yep.
Well, I think the Glen Fargo was a big award winner here too last year, I think, at one of the big spirit competitions too. Maybe the San Francisco one, possibly. I think it might have taken something.
Could have.
I don't know.
I don't follow the awards as much as you.
Why not?
Because I don't care.
I don't do reality television. I just follow whiskey awards.
and I don't. You know, it's all subjective to me.
Well, of course it is.
I mean, don't go out
hard.
and buy a bottle of Crooked Furrow because I tell you to. I mean, go try it and see if you like it
Rob,
yourself.
you're an influencer. You just tell them to go out and do it. Okay.
I've been told that. I don't really care for that title.
So, are there whiskeys, Dan? That is there anything on your radar or on the horizon that you are excited about, or anything that's happening with whiskey and bourbon that you are finding intriguing? And the reason I'm asking this question before I want to ask the next, and it'll kind of all tie together here. But do you think, is there stuff you're excited about that's coming out, or trends that you're seeing that you like?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan of. I mean, this Jack Daniel's Heritage Barrel is one of the expressions and I guess styles of whiskey that I've been a big fan of over the last couple of years. Is the twice barrel philosophy of, you know, aging it in new oak, but then doing it in their heritage barrels and the lightly toasted barrel. The Tennessee whiskey that came out, I think 2019, the first heritage barrel release. If I could turn back the hands of time and snag a few extra bottles of that, I sure would, because I was at the Barrel House over in Sioux Falls a couple weeks ago, and they still had a bottle, and I had another pour just to see if it was just some like treasured memory from an experience. And no, I mean, it
was as solid as the first
really,
time.
really good. And
Clint, when I was over there doing something at his place, he gave me a handful of bottles, and that was one of them. And I don't think he knew what the hell he was giving away. And it was I couldn't believe how good it was.
I'm assuming you finished it?
No, it's at home.
You could bring that.
We bought all these.
I'm just saying
Clint
maybe for next time you could just bring that down. Because now I've heard Dan mention this before about that specific bottle.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
All right. Just throwing that out there.
I just I didn't even know it was a thing, and then he handed me this bottle, and I got it home, and I'm like, well, I should try this. And
was this one of the first versions of this?
I think it was the first.
The first of their special releases?
I think they had done a couple of annual releases prior, but they were never to the scale that Heritage, at least in my recollection. And I've looked back a little bit, and I think the Heritages was the first one that people really took notice and said, wow, Jack Daniel's is putting out some amazing top-end product. Because obviously Jack Old Number 7 is, you know, synonymous across the world with whiskey. And it's a great product, but it had never reached that notoriety of like top shelf, sought after. I mean, obviously it's on every shelf in every store in every nation of the world.
Right.
And so that Heritage bottle, when it came out, I think people really took notice that Jack Daniel's was able to make some really, really special whiskey.
I think it's interesting that though they put that in because the bottle that these twice barrels are in are the same bottle as the single barrel, correct? These are single barrel bottles.
Same shape. But 700 milliliters instead of 750.
Yeah, they're a little different.
I kind of wish they would have made a different shape to differentiate it just a little bit more. Because if some people have a bad experience with a single barrel bottle, which that's subjective too, a single barrel is going to taste different from barrel to barrel, and you're not going to get the exact same thing. To me, I look at it and think, well, God, that one time I didn't really like it. Maybe I'll pass on this if I ever see it on the shelf. I wonder how much that plays.
The labels are vastly different.
Sure, but again, when you're just glancing at the shelf and you just see the shape, I think that triggers more anything than the label, right?
You guys go ahead and pass on that Heritage barrel. I don't care. I'll be right behind you.
Yep, they're probably terrible.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it if I were you.
I'll give you my number. Just call me so I can dispose of it
so you can make sure you get rid of it. Right.
You see one, just call and we'll make sure that it's disposed of.
Okay, so we were talking to the other day about, one of the last podcasts we were talking about when we were discussing people that still get out there to chase these bottles of bourbon, right? The ones that get out early in the morning, enter all the drawings, and try to find the unicorns that they're looking for, okay? And, you're ending up paying these secondary prices on this stuff, and you and I have talked a handful of times about how it's frustrating because you don't get Eagle Rare for $40. Although I saw somebody that just posted on Dakota Whiskey Territory was it a Hy-Vee in Sioux Falls? Showed the Eagle Rare 10 with the price tag, and it was $41 or whatever. They had it at that MSRP, which that's so hard to find. And so you and I were talking about.
Go out to Timmons when Dan's not there and go into the office and just grab a couple bottles.
I wouldn't recommend that though. I would that could land you in some trouble.
Yeah, I probably
there's
wouldn't.
no Eagle Rare up there.
I probably wouldn't be getting the phone call again, I guess, but
yeah, I still would get the text. I'd get for the flavored Eagle Rare that was coming out.
Hopefully they're smarter than
Eagle
that.
Rare Peach.
Oh, God.
That just I physically tasted that for a split second right there.
Just don't call him banana.
And it wasn't good. Oh, banana I'll buy all day. So people keep chasing these things. They're getting harder to get. I know Buffalo Trace has upped its production on its stuff. Supposedly, they've added a bunch of new equipment, new ways to distill. I mean, the whole thing, right?
Well, yeah, we're still years away from seeing any of
exactly. So, do you think, Dan, that we're hitting the bubble's about to blow up on bourbon? Do you think it's going to be? Do you think we've kind of not just in this area, because we still are a good 6, 7, 8 years behind, but just nationally, are we? Because you can't find what you want hardly, right? And everybody gets frustrated. And at some point, you're just going to turn people away because you're like, well, I can't find it. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to buy Old Number 7 and be happy.
Yeah, I think
There's nothing wrong with that. By the way.
I know.
I think that there might be, some of that. But, I mean, if you look at what the industry has done as far as investing in the future of the spirit, I don't see it ending anytime soon. I mean, I was down in Louisville and along the Bourbon Trail in, I guess, October of 22 would have been the last time.
Okay.
And, Bardstown Bourbon Company down there, who's become one of the bigger providers of sourced bourbon, along with MGP or Ross and Squibb, they had 3 or 4 warehouses somewhere in varying stages of being built that were all holding, 25 to 35,000 barrels.
Oof.
Wow.
Jack Daniels has expanded. Buffalo Trace, like you said, they just put a new still in that's going to produce an insane amount of spirit every day. And so that type of investment wouldn't take place if somebody hadn't had, some level of crystal ball into the future for what's going on.
They've certainly got confidence in
Correct.
it then if they're expanding at this point.
And
still.
then I think the other big part is that the international market continues to grow interest in bourbon. And so, bourbon was popular in certain areas, but it's blown up worldwide to where there's a lot more international export of the spirit that is going to continue to impact availability in the U.S. And so I think it will drive away some of those, people that are just looking for the unicorns, whether it's for a quick flip or a ability to have that trophy on their shelf. But at the end of the day, I think for those that truly enjoy what bourbon has to offer, if you're just patient, I think that there will become a time where those bottles are a little bit easier to find because the demand goes down, which means the secondary value goes down, and they'll just be readily available again.
Well, and my take on this whole thing is I've kind of given up on chasing a lot of that stuff too. It was fun for a minute, but then when I was in Minnesota here a month or so ago, it was interesting to find almost every liquor store I went to, I could find Henry McKenna 10-year. Almost every liquor store had 6 bottles of it.
Probably still didn't get it.
I did buy 2.
It wasn't flavored, so.
No, right. And
No,
unlike Rob,
he brought some bottles home.
unlike Rob, when I'm on vacation, I will text my friends to see what they need. Right?
You assume that I go on vacation and just
usually
go from liquor store to liquor store. It's rare that I do that.
That's what I did.
Well, I don't know why. Stop doing that.
So I figured I wouldn't. There's no reason to text you. You've got it all. I wasn't going to bother Dan with anything. But I came to the realization on the way back after buying these bottles and just thinking about it for a minute. To me, anymore, store picks are the way I think I might want to start leaning. And it's partly your fault, I think.
I'll accept that.
Because you have been making just some killer store picks with whiskeys I didn't know existed. Paragon and Southern Star. And you did one other...
Yellowstone.
The I kind of knew of Yellowstone, but not to that degree.
New Riff.
Well, I'm going to take a little... I brought you the first bottle of New Riff back. So
yeah, but I picked a store pick, so it's really
still want to go
story.
back to, I see. Anytime I can not talk about that, damn it.
I know that's why I talk about it, because I know you won't.
But I think more people should look to that over trying to find a lot of these unicorns, because if you kind of get to know these people in the store specifically that are making the picks and kind of know what their profile is, man, you're going to get some solid stuff, right? And I think even with people that you're not familiar with, I picked up a bottle that I brought back from Wisconsin that was a wheated bourbon that was a store pick from this obscure place, and I love it.
Yep.
And I thought maybe that's the next thing to look for. I don't know. How do you feel about that? I mean, obviously you feel great because you do this, right?
Yeah, we've had really good luck finding some great barrels, and actually get to head down to Buffalo Trace and pick a barrel of Buffalo Trace here first part of November, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah.
We've only done a handful of on-site, and as much as I enjoyed our experience at like Lux Row, it's, we went into a conference room and they had samples. It wasn't a lot different than
doing it at the Windsor
office.
Or in your office. Yeah.
But like with Buffalo Trace, we go do a tour, and then, they have a special tasting room. I don't even know what to expect, but we'll be there from 1:00 till 5. So I imagine it's going to not suck.
By 3:30, it's going to feel pretty good. I'm guessing.
We start the barrel pick at 3:30. So
okay, yeah. So 4:00. It'll be great.
4:15. It should be
that's
dandy.
That's super exciting. So you'll have Buffalo Trace store picks then coming. Like, what's the turnaround on something like that? Then you're not sure.
No idea.
Okay.
Hope we can get more of an answer then. I would like to see it before Christmas, but that's 7-ish weeks. I don't know what their turnaround time is on it right now.
That'd be fast.
But you are big in your travels when you go out to stores and you're traveling around the area. You will seek out store picks, won't you?
Yeah. I haven't traveled a ton, but this summer between baseball and then I went down and spent some time with Ryan in Texas a few weeks ago, and I think out of all the bottles that I bought over the course of the summer, there's only one that wasn't a store pick, and probably 7 that were.
Wow. Okay. Have you tried all of them?
No, I have a couple that I haven't opened yet. I got a Foregate from a store down in Texas that Foregate is a pretty highly regarded brand.
Were they all Texas-based whiskeys or no?
No, none of them were.
Oh,
no,
really? Okay.
No, the Foregate is a collaboration with Kelvin Cooperage, and it was one that I've seen a lot of traffic on the different bourbon groups that I follow, and so I picked that one up. And then I got a Traverse City Rye out of Traverse City, Michigan that they picked, and then a Penelope Architect store pick from that store down there too. So,
well, that's a bottle that was one I brought back for you, wasn't it? Was the Architect there? I believe
Architect,
they had. Yeah. Why don't we? Oh, go ahead.
Do you normally get to try them, or do you want to try them in the store before you buy them, or?
So
that's my fear more than anything is that
most of the time, if I go to a store and I'm unfamiliar with either the brand that I'm looking at, or not familiar with the store at all, I'll ask if they have a sample before I'll buy a pick. But in this case, one of the guys that's picked 2 barrels with us, he'll be picking at Buffalo Trace with us as well. He lives in Austin, and he is on the pick team for that store. It's called Oak Liquor Cabinet down there in Austin. And so knowing his palate, I just trusted the picks. And so I felt really good about those. And then, anything from Penelope. I'm a big fan of the Yellowstone picks. I'll more than likely just grab those if I see them.
The Penelope is kind of a newer bourbon, isn't it? It seems like it wasn't on anybody's radar up until maybe a year ago, possibly.
So Penelope's another one of those brands where I heard about it on, it's a podcast called Dad's Drinking Bourbon, and they were talking to the gentleman that's founded Penelope. It's named after his daughter, and they were talking to him early on, and that company has done so amazingly well. They source all of their barrels from MGP, and they've done so well developing Penelope as a brand that MGP bought them.
Wow. No kidding.
For a lot of doll hairs.
I'm going to say. Huh, that's really cool.
Penelope got a new set of shoes.
Yes, she did.
And a house and a car and a boat. Yeah. She doesn't have to worry about college, any of that stuff.
Right.
That's amazing.
Paying for it or going, probably.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess that would leave the kind of final obvious question to this is the challenges that you see for bourbon or maybe just, I don't know, whiskey in general coming up. Do you see any hurdles? You talked about how you don't think this bubble is really going to burst, especially with the international levels that the bourbon is going to now. But what challenges do you foresee? Maybe just as a grocery store, liquor store owner, right? Or as the product as a whole.
To me, I think the biggest challenge that I see is, I guess it's kind of twofold. One is the trends, like the barrel finishing and the different expressions. Amberana is a big buzzword in the community now. It's a type of wood that may or may not be sustainably harvested from certain regions, and so there's a lot of talk about that. And then that's a finishing process that everything that I've heard, people either love it or absolutely hate it. There's not a lot of middle ground, but Penelope did it with Rio. They have some Amberana in there, and then there were several other smaller ones that did it, and then everybody was trying to source it and do an Amberana finish. And so to me, the shelf becomes really noisy when there are too many people that try to play in those specialty bottles. And then, in the last 5 years, we've expanded our bourbon American whiskey footprint 4 or 5 times and continue to try to figure out how to best shuffle and keep the best brands in the set. And then as new product lines become available, it's like, okay, what do I have to cut to try to make room for this new thing? Because I've heard enough about it that I know it's going to be successful. At some point in time here in the future, between now and sometime down the road,
the future, yes,
Penelope is going to hit South Dakota. I'm going to bring it in, but where am I going to set it in?
Yeah.
If they bring in the Penelope Architect, the 4-grain, the toasted, like they have several extensions of their brand. How do I fit it in? What bottles go away? And so I think that's one of the challenges is, what stays, what goes, which trends should we try to chase, which should we not try to chase? And sometimes it comes down to personal preference, but I can't just have on the shelf what I like because there are obviously various palates out there. And so that's where we have to try to get really good at carrying a good mix versus just everything that we like.
Yeah, that's got to be fun, but exhausting too, right? To constantly try to stay ahead of that, especially since out here now it really is becoming a much, bigger deal and people are paying more attention and it's harder to get, even some of the stuff that didn't used to be that hard all of a sudden is. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to, this is probably the most important question I'm about to ask. When it comes to your flavored whiskeys, how do you determine that the candy corn whiskey is going to be a big hit, Dan? Do you just call me? Like, I know I'm going to sell one of them. So
should I tell him I only ordered one bottle?
My God, I would love it if that were true.
Where did that even come from? How did those appear on your radar? They're novelty whiskeys, obviously, but
so Dylan was at a sales meeting and they were talking through some new stuff coming into the fall season, and obviously candy corn has a very limited window of acceptability in the market, and now is about the only 30-day period of time where people remember that candy corn exists.
Right.
So why not?
Well, I can't imagine I've been the only one that's bought a bottle, though, right? Right? God, please tell me right.
I forgot to check it today. I'll have to see how
we
often
haven't
they've
cracked it yet either.
dusted it since we brought it in.
I'm so excited to make Rob try it.
So, like at home, we have this time of year we have candy corn that we never have any other, and peanuts all mixed in a jar.
Mm-hmm.
When are you gonna yammer about the peanut butter whiskey and the candy corn mixed together, tasting like a
son
salted
of
nut
a-
roll?
I've got to do that.
I think I just saw his head explode.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
we
perfect,
should be
Rob.
so fucking lucky.
We'll get some screwball and some candy corn whiskey, and we'll make salted nut rolls. Bam. Go ahead, Dan. You can use that for whatever you need. That's a freebie on us.
That's
all right?
more of a Tucker thing, Hill. Mark will have to take that and...
Oh, I bet you he would make us one of those. Rob, we're going to be rich. You know how rich we got. We know how rich we got off our peanut butter and jelly shots from the Loud. Remember that? Remember all the checks kept rolling in.
Those
off that
might
one?
still be running on the screen down there. I wonder if they've sold more than 4 of them.
I don't know.
You probably bought them all at
They're
brunch
good.
one day.
They were great. It was screwball whiskey. It was grape juice, and then you followed it with a shot of grain belt. So you got the peanut butter jelly and the bread grain flavor in there. It was a great idea.
I think I
and
just
now
threw
this
up
one.
in my mouth a little bit.
He's
Oh,
really
God.
overselling how good it was.
Well, what we've been drinking this whole time are 2 specific ryes. We've talked, of course, about the twice-barreled Special Reserve from Jack Daniel's. And it didn't dawn on me till we just about started podcasting that Jack Daniel's bottle that we're drinking probably still fell under the watch of Jeff Arnett when it was first put into the barrels.
Undoubtedly started there.
2015, I believe. So he was still the master distiller, Jack Daniels.
Yeah, when did he leave?
That was 19, wasn't it?
No, it would have been because we picked our 2 Jack Daniel's barrel-proof single barrels with him in June of 2021. Or
Oh, wow.
2020.
Okay. There we go,
June
yeah.
of 2020. So I think September or October is when he announced.
Yeah, because he was out here for the one last rally.
Yep.
and
It was
that
just shortly after our pick that he announced he was leaving.
it was the beginning of COVID, and it was a thing. and
Yeah,
it
that's
was-
right. So the
can't
other
believe I
barrel
just
then that's
said that
sitting
word.
next to it is from Jeff Arnett's new
Company.
which is
Distilling.
called Company. It's just the name. The name, love you, Jeff, but dang it. It's just hard when you're trying to talk about it. It's called Seismic Rye Single Barrel.
Well, as long as you know it's Company Distilling and not the company.
Right,
Because
don't
it's
say
based
the.
on the company coming over to share whiskey with you.
Okay. Let's not get into the semantics of that whole thing. But
Once
sure.
he described the process and the thoughts behind it,
It makes sense.
I agree. I'm fine with him. Good, giving Jeff a hard time.
So we've been sipping on both of these right now, and what's most noticeable about both of them, as soon as you pour it into your glass, you are going to see a vast color difference between the 2 of them, and I think that has to do with the twice barreled Jack that they do. Correct, going 5 years in their New American Oak, and then 3 years into the
Heritage barrels.
the new Heritage barrels, make it just a dark, beautiful amber color. The Seismic Rye Single Barrel.
Amber, shit, it's damn near as black as that desk.
It's pretty close.
It's
Seismic Rye
dark.
would be more amber colored for sure. What do you guys when you well we like I said we talked about this, but when you're sipping on the Jack Daniel's Twice Barrel, Dan, what are you getting from it? I mean, what really pops for you when you're drinking this?
I think it's probably one of the most well-balanced ryes I've ever tasted.
Wow.
The toasted barrel from that Heritage barrel provides that just soft and subtle oak influence that I love in toasted products.
Would you consider this a toasted product?
So their Heritage barrel is a lightly toasted barrel. That's the whole.
Oh, and that's
kind of the
that's what
premise
toasted
of the
means on those
Heritage.
barrels.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Never thought of
He's
that.
so pretty.
Well, because remember we learned about that, Rob, when we talked about these whiskeys
Yeah.
that were called toasted.
Yes,
It's-
I remember.
Most people would think, oh, that barrel must be really burnt all the way through, but it's quite the opposite.
How do you like your toast?
It's just a light char on the inside of it, which gives
It's
it that flavor.
slowly warmed, and not
Right.
yes,
Not dragon fired.
right.
Correct.
So what do you taste on this then, Dan?
So I've only had one small pour of that.
Oh, okay.
prior to this, and I just started sipping on it.
We have more.
I might have one too.
Not two. Not much more.
I again, like, I'm not out of the three of us sitting here. Rye is probably my least favorite type, but you can't argue with this, even if you're not a rye drinker. This is an extremely smooth sip, right? I mean, there's even I put just a splash of water in it, but even without that, it's still amazing.
This is smooth. It's flavorful. It doesn't have that bite that a lot of ryes have for me.
That spiciness is there, but it's not.
Yeah, but it doesn't beat you over the head with cracked pepper.
Right.
It's. I again think a lot of it has to do with their Lincoln County process and their mellowing that it takes that harsh out of it.
Okay, now can either of you taste, this might be a really hard question to answer, but can you taste a connection between these two? From what Jeff had a hand in to creating the one now from his own company.
I didn't notice a big, as much as between like the first company maple finish versus the Jack 27. There, to me, those were pretty directly correlated. I don't notice as much between these two, but I'm not sure that it's fair. That being the twice barrel, this might be more akin to being associated more with the bonded rye that just came out, or even their original rye product. Now,
you think it tastes more like that? I
don't.
think...
I have not tried the bonded rye. I've got a bottle at home. I haven't opened it yet.
Well, what do you think of the seismic rye then from company, Dan?
I like it. It's it says on the back of that bottle, produced and bottled by the company. So that would tell me that the rye in there is sourced from somewhere. So
right.
Obviously, company hasn't been on its feet long enough to have its own product laying down in barrels to be ready to release. And so I think that's where there's going to be a pretty vast difference, because my guess is he wasn't sourcing it from Jack Daniels.
Right.
Where, I don't know. I tried to just on a quick look, see if I could find where it was sourced from, and I'm not seeing, and it doesn't say, distilled in Indiana or anything like that.
I think most of, he said, and when we talked to him, when company first came out and we got him on the phone, he said he was getting his product from Ohio. I don't know what that means. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole to see who's producing.
Well, you mentioned like three. You mentioned
Ohio.
Bardstown MGP, and you mentioned another one for sourced when you were talking about it. A name I'd never heard of before for sourced whiskey. I mean, if you think about it, great. But Bardstown I knew was becoming a big player, and MGP obviously, and then
the biggest.
You mentioned a third.
I don't remember what you said it. I didn't recall. I didn't recognize the name either.
I said Ross and Squibb.
Ross and Squibb, yeah.
So that's MGP. They just
I
their
see.
New
Got it.
moniker.
All right. Got it. Okay. Well, yeah, they're both, again, that Jack, from all of the ryes I've ever had, if I had to pick a favorite, it was always the Redwood Empire. Their rye to me was one I got comfortable with and I could drink and I didn't mind. And now this Jack comes along and wow, blows it out of the water. The Seismic Rye single barrel from company, it's also solid. I think if you could find a bottle of it, you'd be silly not to grab it, for sure.
I agree. Excuse me. I'm like I said, I'm a big fan of just damn near everything Jack Daniels is putting out. But Arnett knows what he's doing. I mean, it's hard to argue that he's putting out a bad product. This rye is, lovely, according to Patrick. Right? Is that right? That was him, right?
Why does it take so long for us to get this up here? Why can't we start getting this now that it's becoming, because I know the closest now it's in Colorado. Why can't we get this stuff here? Why does it take so long? I guess is my whiny question.
Well, the
he
fact
doesn't
that
have the
Denver has more, the fact that Denver has
people.
more residents in South Dakota, that's always going to be kind of our Achilles heel of getting newer, smaller brands up into the Dakotas, is we just don't have the population draw to I guess, entice some of these smaller companies. If they're going to go and try to make a splash in a market, they're going to do it in states that are much more populated than South Dakota. And then the second side of that is they only have so much whiskey available to distribute.
Right.
So they're going to distribute where it's going to make the greatest impact.
And I suppose then if it becomes popular, obviously, then it just works its way up here. Did you have the whiskey from India? Did you have the Paul John? Have you tried that yet?
Yeah, I tried 2 of them. They brought out the
The Brilliance and the...
They only had 2 samples available the day that they brought them out to the store. They had the
Nirvana is like their entry-level one, from what I understand.
They had the Nirvana, and then they had
Bold?
the edited.
Oh, okay. So you had the 2 that Rob and I liked the least.
Yeah, I actually listened to that podcast the day before they brought it out, so that when they set them on the shelf, I was
You're
like,
wah, 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 wah. Are you gonna? Do you have some? Are you getting some?
Yeah, I brought both of them in.
Okay.
And then as more product becomes available, we'll bring the other 2 in. And I'll probably head down to the Windsor Block at some point in time to try those. Cause,
What did you think of those 2 initially?
I made a really terrible joke when I tried the Nirvana. I just nosed it, and I must have been in the wrong audience because I was like, it really smells like Teen Spirit.
Ba-dum-bum.
See, I knew radio guys would get a kick out of that.
That was a good one.
Liquor guys were like,
What?
That was a good joke, Dan. Well done.
Yeah, I thought
well
so.
done. All right. Well, thanks for bringing up this bottle, Dan. This, I like to try all of these new things when we do these on the podcast. The only regrets I have is that we can't tell people, yes, you can try it too, right? That's the hardest thing about a lot of this. The Jack, yeah, if you can find somebody that's got it, absolutely. The stuff from company so far, you can't get here. If you find yourself in Colorado, though, go to, I think Total Wine is selling a lot of these.
I mean, the nice part is for that bottle, I ordered it from CO Box.
Oh, sure.
And it shipped right to my house. So somehow there's some sort of loophole that some of these companies are able to figure out how to get it here. And I don't ask questions.
That's Rob and I have had that same experience.
Some companies will ship it, some friends won't.
That's a direct shot that I'll let Rob deal with after the podcast is done.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it.
Anyway, yeah, but like Rob and I have always said too, if any of you listening want to try some of this that we have here, just message us, right? And then, if we've got it at our home, we'll bring it up and we'll absolutely share it with you. So I'm not going to have Dan make that promise because Dan has way more, 2 full stores of it that I don't think he wants a lot of people clamoring to have free shots. So anyway, with us, you absolutely can because
you can't have it all, but you can have some.
We'll go buy most of it from Dan again anyway, right?
Well,
Dan Bruner, Timmons Market, the Valley, Box Elder. Thanks for talking with us again, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thanks, Danny.